Ever wonder why a children's show about a talking dragon lasted only 17 episodes, yet sparked million-dollar lawsuits, inspired McDonald's characters, and featured drug controversy rumors that haunted its creators for decades? H.R. Pufnstuf hides bizarre production secrets, shocking legal battles, and wild behind-the-scenes stories that'll change how you remember Saturday morning television. Fact 1. Only 2 actresses auditioned for Witchiepoo. When Sid and Marty Krofft needed to cast the villain of their new Saturday morning show, they only held auditions for 2 actresses, which is remarkably small for such an important role. The first actress to try out was Penny Marshall, who would later become famous for playing Laverne on Laverne and Shirley. But at the time, she was relatively unknown. The Krofft brothers felt she wasn't able to pull off a convincing witchy performance, so they passed on her. Then came Billie Hayes, a stage veteran who had already made a name for herself playing Mammy Yoakum in the Broadway and film versions of Lil Abner. Hayes didn't waste any time showing the brothers what she could do. She walked into their office, jumped right up onto their desk, and launched into a wild, maniacal cackle that would become Witchiepoo's signature sound. The Kroffts were so impressed by her bold audition that they hired her on the spot without seeing anyone else. Hayes would go on to become one of the most memorable parts of the show, with many children rooting for her character even though she was supposed to be the villain. Fact 2. Jack Wild was 17. Teen playing an 11-year-old. The young star who played Jimmy on H.R. Pufnstuf was actually much older than his character, but you'd never know it from watching the show. Jack Wild was 16 to 17 years old during filming, yet he convincingly portrayed an 11-year-old boy who turns 12 in one episode. Wild had just come off a massive success playing the Artful Dodger in the 1968 film version of Oliver, which earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor at just 16 years old, making him the 4th youngest nominee ever in that category. Sid Krofft discovered Wild when his friend, composer Lionel Bart, invited him to watch a rough cut of Oliver in London. Krofft immediately knew that Wild was the perfect kid for their new television show. After a search throughout London to track down the young actor, Marty Krofft eventually became Wild's legal guardian during his stay in the United States so he could film the series. The age difference didn't matter much on screen because Wild had a youthful appearance, and importantly, his voice hadn't fully changed yet, allowing him to sing in a higher register and sound younger than his actual age. Fact 3. McDonald's stole the show's entire concept. One of the most shocking chapters in H.R. Pufnstuf history involves the fast food giant McDonald's and a blatant case of copyright theft. In early 1970, an advertising executive from the agency Needham, Harper & Steers contacted the Krofft brothers about creating characters for a McDonald's advertising campaign based on the Pufnstuf characters. The two sides had several phone conversations and exchanged letters, with Needham even visiting the Krofft headquarters to discuss design and engineering work. Then, on August 31, 1970, Needham sent a letter saying they were moving forward with the McDonaldland campaign. Shortly after, they told the Kroffts the project had been canceled, but it was a lie. Needham had already won the McDonald's account and was secretly proceeding with the project, hiring former Krofft employees to design and build the costumes and sets, and even recruiting the same voice actor who provided voices for Pufnstuf characters to voice several McDonaldland characters. When the first commercials aired in January 1971, the similarities were undeniable. Mayor McCheese looked strikingly similar to H.R. Pufnstuf, both wearing mayoral sashes and having oversized heads. The Krofts sued in September 1971. After a 3-week trial in November 1973, a jury awarded them $50,000. Both sides appealed, and in October 1977, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the Krofts again, ultimately awarding them over $1 million in damages. Fact 4. The show cost double its budget. H.R. Pufnstuf was an incredibly expensive show to produce, and the Krofft brothers quickly found themselves drowning in production costs that spiraled completely out of control. Each half-hour episode was budgeted at $52,000 by NBC, which would be about $335,000 in today's money. However, Sid Croft refused to compromise on his creative vision for the series, insisting on high production values, elaborate costumes, and detailed sets. The actual cost per episode ballooned to over $100,000, essentially double what the network had allocated. By the end of the first season, the show was reportedly $1 million over budget, an astronomical amount for the time. Some sources even suggest the Crofts were anywhere between $1 to $3 million in the red by the time production wrapped. The financial strain was so severe that Sid and Marty, along with some of their colleagues, had to dip into their own pockets to help keep the show from going under. When NBC offered to renew the show for a second season, they only proposed a 5% budget increase. The Crofts knew this meager increase would result in even more catastrophic losses, so they turned down the offer. The show ended after just 17 episodes, though NBC continued airing reruns for years because it remained popular with audiences. Fact 5. Marty Krofft admitted the title was drug-related. For decades, Sid and Marty. Krofft denied that H.R. Pufnstuf contained any drug references, insisting the psychedelic visuals and strange storylines were just their creative style. But in a 2004 interview with the Times-Union, Marty Krofft finally came clean about the show's controversial title. He admitted that H.R. Pufnstuf was indeed a reference to marijuana smoking, specifically playing on the phrase hand-rolled puffin' stuff. However, Krofft explained that the title wasn't born from any genuine interest in drug culture or an attempt to promote drug use to children. Instead, he said it came from a childish sense of humor and was essentially a test to see if he could slip it past NBC executives without being called out on it. Interestingly, the network did have issues with the title, but not for the reason you might think. CBS, which was originally considering the show, rejected the name because they thought Pufnstuf sounded too effeminate. The Crofts explained that HR stood for Royal Highness, spelled backwards, and Pufnstuf was inspired by the popular song Puff the Magic Dragon by Peter, Paul, and Mary, combined with the idea that there would be all this other stuff on the show. Despite the admission about the drug reference, the Crofts have always maintained they didn't use drugs while making the show, with Marty famously saying, "You can't do a show stoned." Fact 6. Paul Simon successfully sued over the theme song. The catchy theme song for H.R. Pufnstuf landed the Krofft brothers in legal hot water with one of America's most famous singer-songwriters. The theme was composed by Les Sarvis, who created all the music for the show despite having no formal musical training. He would record himself singing melodies, which were then arranged and orchestrated for performance by the cast. However, folk rock legend Paul Simon felt that the H.R. Pufnstuf theme sounded far too similar to his 1966 song, the 59th Street Bridge Song, which most people know by its subtitle, Feelin' Groovy. Simon sued the Crofts for plagiarism, claiming they had copied the melodic structure and feel of his hit song. The lawsuit was successful, and as part of the settlement, Paul Simon received co-writing credit for the H.R. Pufnstuf theme song. If you listen to both songs back-to-back, you can hear the similarities in their upbeat, bouncy melodies and carefree spirit. Simon's writing credit appears on official releases of the theme song, including on the album Television's Greatest Hits Volume 5 in living color, released by TV Tunes. This wasn't the only lawsuit the Crofts faced over their show, but it was certainly one of the more unexpected ones, pitting them against one half of the legendary Simon and Garfunkel duo. Fact 7. Costume performers could see steam coming out. Working inside the elaborate costumes on H.R. Pufnstuf was an incredibly difficult and uncomfortable job, especially during hot California filming days. Joy Campbell, who performed as both Clang and Orson Vulture inside the heavy costume suits, later revealed just how brutal the conditions were for the actors. She stated that on particularly hot days during filming, you could literally see steam billowing out of the costumes because nobody had thought to properly insulate them or create any kind of ventilation system. Sid Croft later admitted that back in those days, they simply didn't think about insulating the costumes or making them comfortable for the performers who had to wear them for hours at a time. The performers often felt like they were doing prison time rather than making a children's television show. The costumes were not only hot, but also large, heavy, and cumbersome, making movement difficult and physically exhausting. Despite these challenging conditions, the costume performers showed up day after day throughout the summer of 1969 during the vigorous filming schedule. Their dedication helped create the magical world of Living Island, even though they were suffering inside those suits. The lack of proper costume engineering was just one of many production challenges that contributed to the show's ballooning budget problems. Fact 8. The final episode was a clip show. By the time the Croft brothers reached the end of the first season, their budget problems had become so severe that they literally couldn't afford to film another complete half-hour episode of original content. The solution was to create what's now known as a clip show or flashback episode, which relies heavily on footage from previous episodes rather than filming new material. The 17th and final episode of the series, titled Jimmy Who, centers on Jimmy getting amnesia after bumping his head while running from Witchiepoo. H.R. Pufnstuf, Dr. Blinky, and Freddy try to refresh Jimmy's memory using flashbacks from earlier adventures, while Witchiepoo attempts to do the same thing to manipulate him. The episode allowed the Crofts to cobble together an ending without spending much money on new footage. This cost-saving technique worked so well that it became a tradition for many subsequent Croft shows, which would often feature amnesia-related episodes featuring flashbacks. Despite the financial constraints, the show ended on an optimistic note, with Jack Wilde saying to viewers after the credits, "See you next week," and Pufnstuf adding, "Keep those cards and letters coming." They clearly hoped for a second season, but NBC's 5% budget increase offer wasn't enough to make it financially viable for the Crofts to continue production. Fact 9. Sid Croft cast his next-door neighbor. When the Croft brothers rushed the Pufnstuf movie into production in early 1970, they needed a special guest star to play Witch Hazel, a rival witch and frenemy of Witchiepoo. Sid Croft didn't have to look far for the perfect person to fill this role, because the ideal candidate happened to be living right next door to him. Cass Elliot, better known as Mama Cass from the legendary folk rock group The Mamas and the Papas, was Sid's neighbor and friend. He cast her in the role as a favor, and she agreed to appear in the film. Elliot's performance in Pufnstuf would end up being her only big-screen movie role, making it a unique piece of her legacy. In the film, she performs a show-stopping musical number called Different at the Witches Convention, which delivers a powerful message about being yourself and not conforming to others' expectations. The song has been described as almost an anthem for the gay community with its celebration of individuality. However, according to actress Joy Campbell Mackenzie, who worked on both the TV show and the film, Cass Elliot was very distant on set. Mackenzie clarified that Elliot wasn't rude or arrogant, but she simply didn't mingle with the cast and crew, which surprised most people. Tragically, Cass Elliot died in 1974 at just 33 years old, making Pufnstuf one of her final creative projects. Fact 10. The character originated at a World's Fair. Before H.R. Pufnstuf became a Saturday morning television star, he got his start as a mascot at one of the biggest international events of the 1960s. In 1968, Sid and Marty Krofft were hired to produce a show for the Coca-Cola Pavilion at Hemisphere 68, the World's Fair held in San Antonio, Texas. The production they created was called Kaleidoscope, and it featured their signature style of large-scale puppets and colorful, fantastical characters. For this show, they designed a friendly dragon character who served as the mascot for the entire fair, but his name wasn't Pufnstuf yet. The character was originally called Luther, and he became such a popular symbol of the fair that he appeared throughout the event as an unofficial ambassador. The Kaleidoscope show also introduced several other key characters who would eventually make their way into the television series, including a silly witch character who would evolve into Witchiepoo. After the success at the World's Fair, the Crofts decided to develop Luther and his world into a full television series. They overhauled the character's design, changed his colors, and came up with a new name. They originally planned to call the show Lutherland, but a friend suggested Pufnstuf, which was inspired by the Peter, Paul, and Mary hit song Puff the Magic Dragon, combined with the idea that there would be lots of other stuff involved in the show. Fact 11. Kling and Clang are actually bells. One of the most peculiar details about H.R. Pufnstuf involves the true identity of two of its most recognizable characters. Cling and Clang, the two mute pint-sized police officers who make up H.R. Pufnstuf's rescue racer crew, have always been a bit mysterious to viewers. With their beaked faces, furry three-toed feet, and vaguely animal-like appearance, most people assumed they were some kind of creatures or fantasy animals that fit into Living Island's bizarre ecosystem. Cling wears red and Clang wears green, and they communicate entirely through physical comedy and gestures since they never speak. But the Croft brothers eventually revealed the surprising truth about what Cling and Clang actually are. They're not creatures at all, but rather anthropomorphic bells. This explains their onomatopoetic names, which sound like the ringing of bells. The concept makes sense when you consider that on Living Island, literally everything is alive. The show features talking trees, singing clocks, houses that sneeze, and books with faces, so why not walking? Talking bells who serve as police officers. Interestingly, there's also a connection to another children's story, as the Swedish classic Pippi Longstocking features police officers named Cling and Clang as well. Despite the revelation about their true nature, Cling and Clang remain endearing characters who brought plenty of slapstick comedy to the show through their bumbling attempts to help Pufnstuf and Jimmy. Fact 12. Only 17 episodes aired for 3 seasons. Despite H.R. Pufnstuf running on NBC for what seemed like years of Saturday mornings, the Croft brothers actually only produced 17 original episodes of the show. The series premiered on September 6, 1969, and the final new episode aired on December 27, 1969, giving it a first run of less than 4 months. However, NBC loved the show, and its ratings were strong enough that the network kept it on their Saturday morning schedule by simply rerunning those same 17 episodes over and over again. The reruns continued on NBC until September 4, 1971, meaning the show technically ran for 3 seasons despite having only 1 season of original content. This was actually a common practice for Saturday morning children's shows in that era. Shows like Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Also had very limited original episode counts, but stayed on the air through constant reruns. After leaving NBC, H.R. Pufnstuf moved to ABC, where it continued airing on Saturday mornings from September 2, 1972 to September 8, 1973, and then on Sunday mornings in some markets from September 16, 1973 to September 8, 1974. The show was later syndicated by itself from September 1974 to June 1978, and then as part of a package with 6 other Croft series under the banner Croft Superstars from 1978 to 1985. The constant reruns helped cement the show in the memories of an entire generation of children. Fact 13. Jack Wilde's voice hadn't changed yet. One of the reasons Jack Wilde was able to convincingly play a character much younger than his actual age had to do with an unusual quirk of his physical development. When H.R. Pufnstuf was filmed in the summer of 1969, Jack Wilde was 16 to 17 years old, yet he needed to portray 11-year-old Jimmy, who turns 12 during the series. While Wilde looked young for his age, what really sold the performance was his voice. Unlike most teenage boys whose voices deepen during puberty, Wilde's voice hadn't properly broken yet. His voice wouldn't fully change until he was around 19 years old, which was unusually late for male puberty. This meant that during filming, he still had the higher-pitched voice of a younger boy, making his portrayal of Jimmy much more believable. The late voice change also made it easy for him to sing in a higher register, which was important because the show featured numerous musical numbers. Nearly every episode included a song performed by Jimmy, taking full advantage of Wilde's singing and dancing talents that he had showcased in Oliver. The show essentially became a vehicle for Jack Wilde's musical abilities, with Jimmy getting more solo songs than everyone else on the show put together. The other characters would sometimes join in for a line or two, but Jimmy was clearly the star vocalist of Living Island. Wilde's unusual vocal development turned out to be a perfect accident of timing that helped make H.R. Pufnstuf work as both a fantasy adventure and a musical showcase. Fact 14. Marty Krofft became Jack Wilde's legal guardian, bringing a teenage British actor to America for an extended television production created some serious logistical and legal challenges for the Krofft brothers. Jack Wilde was only 16 to 17 years old and came from England, so he couldn't simply move to California on his own to film the show. To solve this problem, Marty Krofft agreed to become Jack Wilde's legal guardian during the boys' stay in the United States throughout the filming of H.R. Pufnstuf. This was a major responsibility that Marty took on, essentially making him responsible for Wilde's well-being, housing, and care while they were in production. However, Marty would later admit that accepting guardianship of the teenage actor was a mistake. He was already dealing with the enormous stress of producing an expensive television show that was rapidly going over budget. And on top of that, he had 2 young daughters of his own who needed his attention. Trying to balance his responsibilities as a producer, a father to his own children, and a guardian to a teenage actor from another country proved to be too much. The situation was made more difficult by the fact that Wilde was going through his own challenges as a sudden teen idol thrust into Hollywood. Years later, Marty reflected on bringing Wilde into his home as one of the more difficult decisions of the production period, acknowledging that he simply didn't have enough time or energy to properly handle all those responsibilities simultaneously. Fact 15. Judy Frog was based on Judy Garland, one of the most charming characters on Living Island, has a special real-world inspiration that connects the show to Hollywood history. Judy Frog, the singing and dancing frog who serves as Living Island's resident entertainer, was directly based on legendary actress and singer Judy Garland, best known for playing Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Sid Krofft had a personal connection to Garland that inspired the tribute. Earlier in his career, before H.R. Pufnstuf existed, Sid had gone on tour with Judy Garland, performing his puppet shows as an opening act for her concerts. The experience of working with the iconic entertainer clearly left a strong impression on him. When it came time to create the inhabitants of Living Island, Sid decided to honor Garland by creating a frog character that embodied her showbiz spirit. Judy Frog was performed by Sharon Baird wearing the costume and voiced by Joan Gerber, who gave the character a theatrical, performative quality fitting for someone named after such a legendary star. In the show, Judy Frog frequently entertains the other residents of Living Island with song and dance numbers, much like Garland had entertained audiences throughout her career. The character even teaches Mayor Pufnstuf and the gang a dance routine in one episode that the show describes as a pre-Michael Jackson moonwalk. The tribute was a sweet way for Sid Krofft to honor someone who had been important to his early career and to bring a little bit of old Hollywood glamour to the psychedelic world of Living Island.